Welcome to Dr. Charles Speaks, a podcast for now. You've joined us for a special series of transformational talks, selected exclusively from Dr. Charles's corporate success calls. The 15-minute calls are designed to encourage leaders, activate your thought life, and prepare you for the challenges ahead. Dr. Charles joins every call with a blend of his personal experiences, his expertise as a John Maxwell certified mentor and coach, and of course, his more than 30 years of exceptional experience in both corporate America and ministry. Get motivated with Dr. Charles Speaks, a transformational talk from the Red Line on today's podcast, inspiring excellence and generating results.
Good day, my friends. This is Dr. Charles Red, and this is the Red Line, and I'm here today to share with you why it's important to listen to me over the next 15 minutes. I believe I have something important to say about leadership today, and so it's all designed to start your week off on a positive note and to certainly inspire you to continue, that is, to challenge yourself in your own personal leadership growth. So with the time that we have today, I want to talk about leadership from the perspective that leaders today, it's a no-brainer. You must have influence, and you must be able to influence others to make them better along the journey in this leadership. I'm all about positive leadership, but there's a fact here that I want to share with you. It's hard to believe. When I read it, it's like, man, is that right? About 10% of all leaders work at developing their people into better leaders. We could do a better job than that. When I think about leadership, it's certainly about influence, but then what are we doing to make others around us better? What are we doing in terms of making other influencers along the way? Because if you leave the company or leave the situation, is there a replacement there? Is there somebody there that can continue along the journey of leadership? About 20% of all leaders live on the lowest level of developing leaders. And so they are not doing anything in developing people. And as a result of that, their attrition rate is high turnover. People come in for a season, they leave, they go somewhere else. And so I want to talk about the importance of reproducing yourself as a leader and making other influencers along the way. That is so important. It has been said that the ultimate leader, that is, one who is willing to develop people to the point that they eventually surpass, you hear that? Eventually surpass him or her in the knowledge and in ability. That should really be our goal as leaders. As we multiply, we should be able to influence and develop other leaders. And that's the name of the game, is to make others around us better and to allow them to even surpass us in their ability, their knowledge, and so forth. It sounds kind of weird because you want to be the smartest person in the room. That's what most people would admit if they got by themselves. But the reality of it today, in today's leadership, we need continuous growth and insights from the bright minds that are coming up today and that are in the workplace, and to continue to learn from them and grow from them. And so it's not strange that we would be interested in having people surrounded with those people that perhaps will surpass us even in knowledge and ability. And our goal, I'll say it again, should really be to multiply our influence by developing leaders, which in turn those leaders become influencers as well. So there are 3 points I just want to leave with you on today with the time that we have, because we're talking about reproducing yourself in others to develop additional influencers to help you carry out the mission and the job that you have before you. So number one, it's a no-brainer. The function of a leader is very simple. It is to produce more leaders, not more followers. We've got a world full of followers. So we've got an expression that from the church community, and it goes like this: the harvest is plenty, but the labors are few. And so we need laborers, leaders, that is, to ultimately make new leaders and that will shrink the numbers of followers. We got enough followers. We need leaders right now. We need positive leaders, effective leaders, and that's really the key. Because if you really want to make an impact as a leader, you've got to be committed, that is, committed to developing leaders. When I look at this, I see this from a corporate perspective, training to make trainers. That's leadership. And from a church community, I look at it from the perspective from being a disciple to make disciplers. And it's all about leadership. It's all about carrying the message further, because as you multiply the message and you multiply the things that you're able to pour into others, it's going to reach all four corners of the world. It surely will make a difference. As I've said before, we've got enough negativity out there. We have enough followers. Now our job is to identify followers and make them become leaders, because when it's all said and done, my friends, teaching others to become leaders is really like handing off the baton in a relay race. That's really what it's all about. And if you run well, but are unable to pass that baton to another runner, then you lose the race. But on the flip side of that, if you run well, if you recruit well, if you train, then you will see that you will have a bunch of good runners and learn how to hand off the baton smoothly and ultimately win. That's what it's all about. Because in this relay of life and going around the track and handing the baton to one leader to another, it's about continuous improvement. It's about celebrating the victory, not just by yourself, but everybody has a part in the race to get to the ultimate finish line and to continue to grow on. That is so important. So that number one function of a leader, it's to produce more leaders, not more followers. I've said it, I'll say it again. If you want to make an impact today in today's world, if you want to leave a legacy, then you've got to be committed to developing leaders. And look back and look for that upcoming leader who's aspiring to learn more and to grow more and to be better and to do more. They're there. They may be a diamond in the rough, but you have an opportunity to do something special, and that is pour in that knowledge and that experience. And at the end of your journey, when you sit back and you go off into retirement, you can think back the impact that you've made on society. Number two, when you influence leaders, guess what? You indirectly influence all the people that they influence. When you influence leaders, you indirectly influence all the people they influence. That is so important. I've used the sports analogy. You can trace back to many of these successful football teams that have made it and continuously win. And you'll find that if you really search back, you'll see that they come from a tree of successful coaches. And there's a tree line. I guarantee you probably more than a quarter or maybe even a half of the NFL head coaches, you can trace them back to some coach back in the 70s, back in the 80s, where they served as assistant coaches and they began to move around from another team to coaching another position or another team that they have had the experience of working with on another head coach. But they seem to all come from the same tree line of that successful coach. Whether you go way back to Vince Lombardi or you go back to some of the other successful winning coaches. I'm thinking of San Francisco, the line of coaches that came from that head coach. I can't think of his name right now, but you look back and you'll see a lot of the winning coaches came out of that. Well, look at Green Bay. Everyone knows that. A lot of the great coaches came from that tree line. But when you think about it, as you think in terms of influencing, it is a way of multiplication, because the greater your influence, the greater the number of people you can help. And that is so true. Alan Bernard, he said this. He says, a good leader will always have those around him or her who are better at a particular task than he or she is. This really is the hallmark of leadership. So never be afraid to hire or to manage a person who is better at certain jobs than you are. They can only make you and the organization you serve stronger. When you think about it, if it's only just two people that's running the whole show, that's running the whole organization, they're the only two that are capable of doing the leading, then you know what's going to happen. I don't need to tell you, but I'll tell you anyway. The organization just simply not going to be able to flourish. When you retire or anything happens to you, if you're one of these type people that's running the show and no one else can have a part in it, then you're going to realize that at some point when you leave, the organization is not going to be able to survive. I've seen this in church organizations where the pastor has served for many, many years, and I'm not putting down pastors, but if they're not passing the baton, if they're not preparing for their exit, then what happens when they leave, you find that they may be a church split. There may be a struggle for who's going to take over, or someone takes over who's not quite ready, and they just pretty much start all over from scratch and try to build from there. And it's hard to do that. But when you are able to be in the land of the living and then put a transitional plan together, then you're able to have a smoother transition when it comes time for you to leave the scene, whether you forced out or whether you are retiring or whether you just simply died in office and service. There is a plan for you. But the reality of it is that it takes a leader to not be concerned so much about someone taking your spot before your time is up, or being insecure, or being afraid to hand the baton over. You got to be a big person in the sense that if you take all of the insight and all of the knowledge together, you'll realize that you're doing your congregation, you're doing your organization, whether it's corporate America, you're doing them a great honor when you're able to leave something positive and to be able to allow the dream to continue. So number 2, we said when you influence leaders, you indirectly influence all the people that they influence, and the effect is multiplication. My last point I want to leave with you on today, number 3, being able to lead others begins with leading yourself well. Because the reality, folks, you can't reproduce what you don't have. And so that is so important that when you take that which you have, the discipline, the self-discipline, the planning, the organizational skills, the multitasking skills, the person of influence that brings that positivity, that's able to make others around you better, that's able to pour into others' insights so that they too may be able to grow. So in closing, I like to take this quote from Robert Louis Stevenson. His advice, he said this. He said, "Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds you plant." You've been listening to Dr. Charles, The Red Line, and until next time, God bless and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Dr. Charles Speaks. Visit drcharlesred.com for booking info for your ministry, business, or leadership team. Get info about the Red Line, a 15-minute corporate success call each Monday morning with Dr. Charles. Follow Dr. Charles on all social media at Dr. Charles Red. Subscribe to the podcast here for every episode of Dr. Charles Speaks. Thanks for joining us. Like Dr. Charles always says, no matter what, never, never, never give up. Until next time.